South Africa has one of the youngest populations in the world, but instead of powering our economy, our youth are stuck in limbo. What went wrong? Why did the sacrifices of June 1976 result in the formation of parties like the EFF? Our economic sector is in tatters, while South Africa's youth are facing an increasingly hostile job market, with new labour force data revealing that nearly half of young people remain unemployed. The Federation of Unions of South Africa says the first quarter of 2025 marks a worsening trend in youth joblessness, with formal employment shrinking and a growing number of young people entering adulthood without ever having held a job. Statistics South Africa also says that approximately 21 young million people, with the ages 15 to 34 accounting to 33.1% of the population, largely constitute this number. This is all still the while our political leaders are still on podiums grandstanding and talking about change that never happens.
Youth unemployment continues to be one of the most pressing and persistent crises in South Africa. With over 60% of young people out of work, the consequences go beyond just economic stagnation.
Well, I think he's right that it's a huge, it should be a huge focus for the country, because if we don't get it right, it will continue to debilitate the country, growth. And if we get it right, on the other hand, I think it really is a huge opportunity for us to really build for the future. Because, you know, if you think about it, the best endowment you can make in a country is by preparing youth for, you know, the future of work, the future sectors to come. Yes, I mean, the Deputy President is quite right to make that the top priority.
So I don't think it's a secret to any of you that the youth in this country in this day and age are facing some of the greatest challenges of any generation prior. Yes, we do have the freedom of movement, and yes, we do have access to education, and yes, the economy is open for participation, but the level at which we can participate and the level of education that we are subjected to, I think there is no argument, there can be no doubt that the quality of both of these things is dire. So with this month being June, a reflective month and a month in which we are supposed to be celebrating youth, is one where I decided to make a video about the depth of the plight that we face as young people in South Africa. I unfortunately can no longer count myself as one of those young people anymore. I'm not going to say my age. I'm just not. But I still wanted to make this video to reflect upon how this generation of young people are sitting on top of a particular opportunity that could benefit not just themselves, but the country as a whole, and the government in its failure to rectify all of the other peripheral things that could affect the livelihood and the well-being of this young population are ultimately failing this country. So the opportunity that I speak of is a demographic dividend. Now, a dividend, by emphasis on that word particularly, means something where it pays off or it pays out. A dividend is something by which you benefit from. And a demographic dividend is what happens when you have a majority of your population that is of working age, but the fertility rate is starting to drop. And to emphasize my point, I brought up this website where I was able to move time of South Africa's population pyramid from 1950 till the current year 2025. We can see that the biggest bulge of the pyramid as it advances is in the middle of the pyramid of 2025, and this highlights the majority of our population being of the age bracket between 19 to about 39, maybe 45. As we know, this is the most productive segment of the population, the segment of the population we can expect to work the most. If investments were made in education for developing skills, healthcare for longer lifespans, and good government policy to ensure workers' rights, taxation, and good living standards, then yes, we would be able to harness the demographic dividend. And just a quick cursory Google search will yield the same results and the same points made mention earlier for the South African government to achieve this. So the majority of your population is able to contribute to the workforce, bring productivity to the economy, earn wages, pay taxes, and that's good for the government. And at the same time, the fertility rate is still at what we call replenishment level. People are still having enough babies whereby the population can sustain itself. And that is a golden opportunity, because it does not happen very often. The past 30 years of this ANC government is having been decadent, self-serving, corrupt, and pretty much just negligent as to the needs of our people on the whole. And ultimately, where does this lead us? It leads us to a young populace that are growing increasingly frustrated, increasingly without options. And this is not just a crisis, this is a ticking time bomb. We saw what a preview of this could look like back in 2021.
In recent weeks, South Africa has seen some of its worst violence since the apartheid era.
That they must know that they will shit with us, they get it.
Fueled by inequality, the pandemic, and the arrest of a former president. Protests and looting erupted across the country.
I'm looting because we apply for jobs, they don't give us jobs. We try and go to offices, try and strike, it doesn't even work.
And just as you saw the frustrations being voiced by some of the youths during the riot, the expert panel that was assigned by President Ramaphosa found high unemployment with youth unemployment specifically as being one of the contributing factors to the unrest. Even though the jailing of ex-President Jacob Zuma can be cited as one of the main reasons for the unrest during the 2021 riots, I myself personally view this as a preview as to what could happen on a nationwide level if we do not tend to the large numbers of youth unemployment and frustrations in South Africa. Just take this chart from Statistics South Africa showing the 10-year gap between 2015 and 2025. This shows a 9.2 percentage point increase, raising the above youth unemployment level from 36.9 to 46.1% in the first quarter of 2025. Financial and investment analysts also warn us that we are at severe risk due to social unrest, and this is not only coming from local quarters. An OECD survey from June this year cited South Africa's regulatory framework as being restrictive. And this has not helped since GDP per capita has stagnated, even though cost of living has increased over the past decade. South Africans still struggle to find labor market opportunities in these conditions. All the while, this means government has been unable to collect the revenue that it needs, hence increasing its debt service costs as it continues to borrow money. So all of these aforementioned things, when they are applied to the youth demographic of South Africa, the picture is quite grim. We see that not only are living standards the same as they were 10 years ago, while the cost of living has increased comparatively, other OECD countries have sort of scaled up, gradually but surely, while at the same time structural inequality has remained persistent. That means quality of education has remained stagnant, if not deteriorated in quality. Very stringent regulations, rules, and the structures and the processes by which we need to access certain things, whether it's starting a business or accessing education, as I've mentioned before. We cannot forget the flawless movement, of which tertiary school fees were a big focus for young people. Yes, I know that schools are businesses at the end of the day, but something needs to be done in order to meet the massive demand for quality education, which is still a massive key for climbing the social ladder in this country and many other parts of the world. Then to flip the coin adversely, a lot of these youth agencies that have been set up to help us young people, many of them are not as effective as we would like, mostly due to a lot of corruption persisting in our political system. The oversight which many of these agencies are subject to if they come from government, it's quite stringent. There are certain policies, codes of conduct, funding channels which are either too restrictive or at times too loose. Well, we all know what I mean when I refer to too loose, especially in this country. And then there's a skills mismatch, because many of the courses which young people have access to because of their restrictive basic education, they are mismatched with the market. The market is not exactly asking for this influx and overflow of courses that these kids are accessing, because the restrictive basic education system is not allowing us to gain entry into these STEM subjects or these STEM skills that are so badly needed. But all is not lost. It's not too late. South Africa is still a country with immense potential, so many resources, including human resources. Human capital is what we are talking about in this video. So if we can pivot and have a very sharp turn where we steer the ship from a policy perspective regarding young people, systems that are guided to help them, which are free from interference and over-regulation from government in the education sector, in the small business and entrepreneurship space, we can still stand a chance of turning this country around. 2005 yielded the years where Thabo Mbeki was at the helm of this government, yielding an average of a 5% GDP growth year on year, which is phenomenal. We are all praying to get back to those numbers, and it is possible, because a country that fails its youth has no future. But a country that listens, interprets, and corrects itself based on the cries and the demands of young people, that is a country that does stand a chance. And it is one that I am certainly wanting, willing, and hoping to be a part of very, very soon.
The job creation might seem a long way off, but politicians hope it's enough to give young people hope and to avoid an Arab Spring here in South Africa. Despite the increase in protests, many young people don't want revolution. They just want an opportunity to earn a living for themselves.